Okay, well, my name is Hawley, and have been working, live in northern Thailand, Chiang Mai, Thailand. And my work is with the Karen Leadership Development Program. The Karen people are a hill tribe, the largest hill tribe in northern Thailand. Work with university students who come to the city to get educated, but come with a real variety of needs and opportunities for encouragement, development, and interest, really, in finding and knowing God. So it's a wonderful spot to be dropped into. Yeah. 11 years. 11 years.
God bless you. We are Todd and Kellie Butterworth. We were members of the First Presbyterian Church of Carson City for over 20 years. Our membership corresponded pretty closely with the tenure of Bruce Kochsmeyer. I think we were church shopping when he was here, maybe testing the waters on perhaps taking the job here. And then we retired, did a long road trip around the U.S. and moved to Ecuador right around the time that Bruce retired. So we had the opportunity to retire at a young age, kind of pre-retire in some ways, because we're not old enough for Social Security or drawing down IRAs. And so we took that opportunity to see the world and to serve the kingdom. And we moved to Ecuador about 2 years ago this month. Wow. And have been playing retiree and trying to do some tourist stuff despite the pandemic. But God has really brought us in some new and interesting directions in terms of serving the kingdom. And it's been really interesting and fun.
Yeah, we just kind of put the word out that when we said we were retired and doing missionary work, the first question was, what organization are you with? And we thought about being with a mission organization, but we didn't want to be limited in what we did, and so we just said we're kind of on our own, just doing our own thing, and let us know if you need help. And within a couple weeks we got a lot of messages of support help that missionaries that have been there long term that they needed. So
we serve a God of abundance. And when you pray for work, he's got a little bit that can be done.
He's got a list to do this.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, but it's been fun because we've worked with folks from SIM and World Venture, and was there a third one?
One Mission.
One Mission. And so, we're just kind of doing whatever they need.
Wonderful.
So, it's been fun.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I can't separate my call to Christ as a child of God, from my desire or feeling of a call to serve, So by that I mean I came to Christ later in life. I was already graduated from university. And and when I made that decision, it was truly a decision and something that I couldn't not do almost. And so I really wanted to immerse myself in some way for the kingdom at that time. Very young, of course, meaning spiritually young. And, young, 20, 22. But a lot of passion, a lot of desire, not a lot of knowledge, But God is so good and gracious and generous despite ourselves, I think, in our youth. And so I started out looking for ways that I could do ministry and using what I had at that point, loaves and fishes wise, which wasn't a lot as far as education in the realm of knowing theology, etc. But God used that passion to first get me teaching. I was a teacher. So my first experience was in the early 80s. and in Maui, of all places. I always like to make a joke. Yeah, I heard the call in those waves, and I went. But it really had nothing to do with Maui. It was honestly at that point, it's kind of been that way. Who will take me? You know, who's willing to take me? This is what I can offer, and so it started there, and so that's the beginning, and then through that I've been, Lord's just, that was the start, and then other things began to open up as life situations changed and opportunities opened, and I grew up more and knew myself better, knew more of who I was and what my gifting was and what God was honing in me for His kingdom. And so I have actually worked, in professional, if you want to call it, ministry in West Africa, in Togo, and Cameroon, and Nigeria, and then a lot of work in Kazakhstan,
Wow.
and then now in Thailand, dropped into Thailand for this good more than a decade. And then in between, I've been to seminary a couple times, and so got my education, and then also worked in the local church in Portland, where I went to school, and worked as worked in secular work as well. I was a director of a crisis pregnancy center. I mean, I'm 66, so I've had my, you go, wow, that's a lot, but in 40 some years of knowing Christ, it just, when you look back at where I am, when you look back, you can see how it's evolved and why, and what God was doing, and what that was, and where I am today. I can just really see how He used all those things to bring me where I am today.
At the time, it seems like they might be random
Yes.
and disconnected.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, they come together as a story.
Right, they do. Right. So, but most of my work has been around discipleship, I guess I would say, teaching, and counseling, soul care, working in soul care, working as people are trying to iron out what do I do with the issues in my life, and then reconcile those with my relationship with God, and how can we find a way through those where they're together, they parallel one another, and that was always a curious thing for me, because it seemed like whenever I worked on the field, even and often with people in ministry, they were struggling even on the field. It's real life there. And I often worked with their kids, and so I was really wondering, how do we do that, and how do we do that when we're not in America, where you can
language barrier,
Cultural.
even get the help you might think you need, and so that definitely opened up an area of interest for me. Now my area is really spiritual formation, so you kind of look at discipleship and maybe soul care, and you kind of put those together, and it's kind of a formative way of looking at our spirituality, that God's always spiritually forming you, always, and everything's part of that, everything in your life, and so that's kind of my thing that I love to read about, learn about, and do with others.
I'm not a Damascus Road guy. I think it's telling about how God works in our lives. I think He knows that kind of experience, like the Apostle Paul had on the Damascus Road, might not have worked with me. I might have either been blown away by it or resisted it. And so my faith walk has been and is evolutionary and kind of slow, but always interesting and always growing and moving. And so, like Lou, I came to Christ after college as a result of influence of various people in my life, and feeling Pascal's God-shaped vacuum in my life, and trying to figure out what could fill it. And since then, I had a really nice experience being a Christian here in this church and part of this family, this part of Christ's body. In terms of our mission work in Ecuador, again, it was kind of an evolutionary thing. We didn't make this one-time decision to say, hey, we're going to go to Ecuador and we're going to be missionaries. In fact, I still kind of hesitate to even call myself that. I'm just a Christian who's trying to do his part, whatever that might look like. So
Definition of a missionary, if you ask me. That might be-
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we've made that word something that really, I think, is meant to be a little bit more inclusive than we usually think
right.
about it, but I love that.
Yeah, and shouldn't we all be missionaries, right?
Mhm.
Every last one of us.
Wherever we are.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Exactly. For me, I wasn't raised in a Christian home. My dad was raised Catholic and vowed when he left the house he would never go to church again, and my mom, kind of the same thing. And when Jeremy, our son, was 5, I put him in preschool at the Lutheran church, and they had a board that had weekly messages. And then on my way to work, I passed by 2 or 3 more churches that had boards out. And every week, or every day, I would read the boards, and they would
Mhm.
change. And it was like God was talking to me, and I was like, I think I better,
Wow.
better listen. And so we joined the church, and I was really interested in mission work. I had done some free dental clinics in Nevada for kids quite a few times. And then, that was a few years later. I was working one day, and I was like, wow, it'd be kind of fun to share my skills with someone else. And I think it was Rob and Jenny got a letter from the Incline Church asking for help with a dental mission.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I'll go. And so I think I've done 4 or 5 dental missions. Went to Mexico for a construction mission trip, ended up doing some dental stuff there. When they heard I was in dentistry, it was like, oh,
Mhm.
great, we're going to set up this medical trailer and you can work there. And I was like, okay. And then DR, Belize.
Mhm.
So yeah, Mexico,
Multiple
DR, Belize,
times.
multiple times. And I loved that. It was really fun. I just loved doing that. And people were so grateful. And I think a few times we actually saved some lives with some pretty serious abscesses that could have killed
Sure.
people. So that was really fun. And then, I just...
We have a story on this dental mission in the DR. Maybe you can help me fill in some of the details too. But first time we got there, there was this young girl who had been taken in by this. Help me with
Kids
the-
Alive.
Yeah, through
Kids Alive
Kids Alive.
orphanage.
Basically rescued this kid, orphanage.
Right.
She was, when they found her, I think 9 years old, basically didn't have a language. She was eating out of trash cans on the street, and they rescued her and nurtured her in their orphanage, sent her to their school. And when we came on the scene, she was 16 or 17 years old, and this beautiful young lady who had an interest in dentistry. And so the dental team invited her to be part of their team, and they taught her how to do oral health instruction. So she was basically the welcome wagon when the kids would come through to get their dental work done, and she would teach them how to brush and floss and explain things to her. And she did a fabulous job of it. And when we reached the end of that week, we had a little bit of extra money in our fund for that mission trip, and we were trying to figure out how to use it, and decided that we would set it aside for her to go to dental school, or at least to college if she was interested. And so we did that. And then in a subsequent mission trip, there was a dentist who was on that trip and who was really taken with her. And by this time she had more skills and knowledge in the area and was really serious about pursuing dentistry as a profession. And so he committed to her that he would fund her entire time in university, which is pretty affordable in the DR, if she wanted to do it. And so she went off to school to become a dentist, and during that time, other mission teams came to Jarabacoa in the Dominican Republic and built a small dental clinic on site at their school property. And now, I don't know if it's still happening, but subsequent to her graduation from college and becoming a dentist, she was working in that clinic in the school that she went to.
Wow.
I mean, talk about the transformational processing,
Right.
God's providence of using so many people to come together to do a great, great work in this life. Really amazing.
Yeah, that's lovely.
It was pretty special.
Lord, I don't know how to talk to people about you. I'm not a Bible expert.
I don't want to say the wrong thing.
How can I help open the gospel to Carson City and beyond?
Spreading the gospel is about building personal relationships. It's communicating with people on a meaningful level, spending time, getting to know someone, being a friend, connecting. Listen, just listen. Our world is full of people longing for connection. They want to be heard. Hear what they are saying without supplying all the answers. So, how do we open the gospel to Carson City and beyond? Just be you. Share the wonderful you God created you to be, with the world longing for more connection, fellowship, relationship. Jesus.
So it was interesting in the dental missions that we did. We made a decision that whoever was sitting in our chair, whether it be a 2-year-old or a 80-year-old, that we would sit them down and ask them how their life is going. You know, is everything okay? And then, can we pray for you? And a lot of times they were kind of taken aback that we would do that for them, but when we did it, you could just see them just completely relax, just like, okay, I'm fine. And they weren't nervous at all.
So there were dental benefits.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Well, there's that. Yeah. But then we were in Sane Bite, and a guy was riding his bike every day by our clinic, and some of the construction folks. And by the end of the week, he had some dental work done, and he came back on Sunday and committed his life to Christ. And he would ask us little questions, and we had red shirts, so he knew who we were. So we'd ride by the construction site and then the dental site and kind of peek in and ask questions. And the pastor there, Jim Nance, he gave him a Bible and sat down and talked to him. And he was having trouble with drugs and alcohol and domestic abuse and all kinds of stuff. But he committed his life to Christ, and he was at church every Sunday after that. So just by riding by and seeing what we were doing. So you never know.
Sometimes I think we underestimate the work we do and the impact it might be having. I just think we need to move forward and trust. We might go to do something and only one person shows up, and maybe that person isn't even touched, but it might be someone who
Riding by.
sees
Right,
and riding by on their
exactly,
bicycle.
exactly, exactly.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot going on out there that we don't know.
Right.
Right. Just
Don't.
being faithful to our part, and you never know what will drop in. You
Right.
know, it's like, oh, wow. Yep.
Exactly.
It's really wonderful. Well, my relationship with what's now the KLDP started when I came to Thailand. When I came, I was working with the mission community that's there. It's got a huge missionary community in Chiang Mai. It's kind of like the Colorado Springs of Asia, to be honest. Every organization that you can think of has an office there. And it's used not so much to do ministry in Thailand, but Asia, Southeast Asia, where missionaries are working, that's kind of a home base. So they come in. And my work in spiritual formation, expats were needing the kind of help that I could provide, but I wanted to work locally. So there wasn't anything happening. So I was just asking the Lord to open that up. And at that time, the group I was with said, I'm just going to wait and see what the Lord brings. There's a need for me here, and I'm happy to give it, but my heart is really with the local people. So I had been asked to teach a pastoral counseling class at a seminary. It's actually a seminary that was originally Presbyterian. And this seminary had something they don't have anymore, but at that time, they had an MDiv program in English.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and that MDiv program was specifically for individuals who had a passion to grow and develop and their ministries in their wherever they were in Southeast Asia. So the students were Myanmar, Korea, Vietnam, Japan, and we had a couple of Korean students there that were in this Master of Divinity program. And they were in my class. And one of those students in my pastoral counseling class was Kiki, who is the director now of the Korean Leadership Development Program. So she was one of my students. And maybe about 3 weeks into the school semester, she came in and said, "Will you mentor me?"
Wow.
And I said, "Yeah, I would be delighted." And so we met 2 times a month. So our deal at the time was I would choose what we'd do one of those times a month, and she would choose what we would do the second time. And we would spend an afternoon together. Basically, it was a very informal mentoring. It was just mostly, I was trying to figure out what she needed, and where I could really speak into her life and give some encouragement. And so the second time, we would do something I'd choose, and then she'd do something. And so really early on, she said, well, I have a plan today. We're going to go see my grandma in the village.
Oh, cool.
And I said, oh, great, wonderful. Because by then, my experience outside of the city was pretty minimal. And I come from a family that camps and fishes and hunts, and I love to be out and about. And so I thought, go to the village. I'd love to go to a Korean village. And so she said, okay, so that'll be our plan. So we drive out of the city, and I said, how am I going to communicate? Because at that point I didn't know anything with your grandma. And she said, oh, she speaks English better than me. Wow. And she's from Myanmar, and they taught English. And anyway, her grandma, we went to visit her, and she was already at that point, I think, in her 80s.
Oh, wow.
And anyway, to make a long story short, her grandma ended up being my mentor.
Oh, wow.
A Korean grandma
Wow.
who became then my person that I learned so much from this woman. And
do you think Kiki foresaw that as a possibility in inviting you there?
I'm not sure. I'll have to ask her. She just loved her grandmother. Her grandmother was certainly the spiritual kind of leader in that family. She she'd been in ministry her whole life. She did a prayer ministry at that time by cell phone.
Oh.
So she had a little cell phone. She put it in a cup, okay,
Oh.
to make it echo, make
Right.
it louder. And she would call through, group calling.
Mm-hmm.
She would call, because Karen people live all over the world as refugees,
Oh, right.
okay, all over the world. They're in almost every country in the
Huh.
world. And so she had these groups. So she would start, depending on the time of day, in the like 4 in the morning,
Wow.
whatever she could do, she would call this group living in Canada, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
and then pray with them. And then she'd move across the globe. Then she'd go to, Europe, and then she'd talk to Karen there and pray with them, just to strengthen them in their faith
Right.
and, to carry on. And then she would do Asia, and then she would do down under, down in Australia. She did the whole world, and
Oh,
she
wow.
did this almost every day. And I would be with her. If I was with her during one of those things, she'd say, "Well, you're on today." It's just like a radio program. We'd just sit there and we'd read from the scriptures. We'd sing a song, and then we would just give testimonies. People would give testimonies. People would share, and she would just pray. She had a real ministry of prayer. And Kiki knew this about her grandma, and she just loved her so much. I think she just wanted me to know this woman who was so exceptional. And her grandma just, the day we were leaving, that first day I met her, she said, "When will you come back? When will I see you again?" And so that became at least a monthly ritual for me to go up and be with, Pee-pee, actually. That word means grandma in Karen.
yeah.
And so she became that to me. And, she would call me, just call me. She loved the phone. That was kind of, she was housebound kind of.
Oh, so-
And that just kind of became her tool
Right.
to reach out. And she would call me and she would sing to me. Like I'd say, "Hey, Pee-Pee," and all of a sudden, I'm hearing a hymn.
Oh, wow.
And she's singing to me, just singing all the verses, because the Karen know every verse.
Oh, wow.
And then she'd say, "I love you, and the Lord loves you, and I hope you know that today.
Oh, that's cool.
I look forward to seeing you." Click. And but anyway, so from Kiki, I just developed this. That started to, it was her grandma that taught me who the Karen were, and what made a Karen person, and where they came from as far as how they approached their life with God. And then with Kiki, I just grew her up, and then a couple years toward the end of her master's, a small group of Karen young adults like her, because she was in her 20s, they were talking about, what do we do to help these young Karen, because they're just not making it. They're coming to the city hopeful and, coming down from the village to the city and wanting to make a new life and the hope of the family even,
Right.
for education, never had it, no one had ever gone to college, no one had gone to university. And the hope of the family, and then within a semester, they're going home because they couldn't handle it.
Right.
There were just too many things. And so this small group, I think there were 4 of them, who had survived, Kiki being one of them. They had found each other, and they started talking about, what can we do to help these kids? And that's how the KLDP started. And the beautiful thing, truly, to me, for the KLDP is that it is Karen birthed. It's not my ministry. They invited me.
Right.
They invited me. I didn't invite them. They invited me. And that's what I love about it. And that's what's made it such a beautiful part for me to be part of, because, and it's training for me, because, when you come along as a partner and you're not the white educated guy that comes, and says, let's do this and that, but you come along as a partner, there's a humility that you have to hone and develop. And it's been good. It's been good for me, to be honest. It's not been easy, but it's been good for me personally, and I know I'm helpful to them.
Right.
So that's how it started out with just knowing Kiki.
And it's sustainable too. you ever leave,
Yes.
they will just continue
Oh,
on.
yeah.
And that's huge, because in Ecuador, they get a lot of missionary turnover, and they start some great programs, but they don't focus on bringing in locals so that when they're gone, those programs will continue.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're kind of working with the foundation and getting Ecuadorians involved
Good.
in what we're doing, so that if and when we leave, it'll keep going. And it gets them invested in it and excited, and just, wanting to bring others in.
Oh, come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come into his presence with thanksgiving. Let us make a joyful noise to him with songs of praise. For the Lord is a great God and a great King above all gods. In his hand are the depths of the earth. The heights of the mountain are his also. The sea is his, for he made it, and the dry land which his hands have formed. O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. For he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture, and the sheep of his hand.
My job is to work myself out of a job, and I
Exactly.
really believe that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I hate that.
I mean, you have to, and it's not easy to do.
No.
You know, especially as an American, I think we have a different work ethic, and culturally we are different, and to really put yourself under and submit
Right.
to the local culture, their way they think, and to buy in with them, to advise and buy in and do what it is you bring to the party.
Exactly.
But at the same time to really see that you're not the beginning and end. You're just a little blip,
Right.
and thank God you are. But it's just
Right.
that blip that's yours.